Hello, I'm Hannah Absalom.
And I'm Alex, her long-suffering husband.
And today we are going to be looking at apprenticing and that whole subject and why it is so important to be making sure that we are apprenticing at least one person, if not several people. So, Alex, apprenticing, what does it mean to have an apprentice? It sounds terribly old-fashioned. Yeah, what does it mean?
So it means that we are raising up other people who are either younger than us in years or younger than us spiritually, and we're investing into them, we're helping them become more like Jesus in their lives. And I think the essence of it is it's all about relationships. So I think the mistake that many people make is they make it about information transfer. It's a dump of knowledge. And whilst knowledge is part of it, there's a little phrase that we use a lot, which is the letters REI. And they stand for relationships, experiences, and information.
So not an outdoor store.
It's not an outdoor store, no. And so it's really saying that the way, if you think back in your life to the people who have had the most influence, it's the quality of the relationship that has shaped you. So that's time, and we can talk about that if you want. The second thing is experiences, and so meaningful experiences, which often become a context for relationships to happen. And then information, knowledge is part of it, but it's the least important of the three.
But the people, therefore, who have invested into us are the most important factor.
Yes,
basically.
yeah, because what happens is you look at their lives and you want to imitate them and be like them, and you learn from observation and from the stuff they do.
So as Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. That's what we should be doing.
Totally.
With other people.
Yes.
Okay, so what does it actually look like then to do this apprenticing, whether it's particularly the relationship aspect, we'll come on to the information later and maybe even the experiences, but what does that relationship look like in terms of apprenticing someone?
Yeah, I think it's giving people time. I think it's inviting them into your life. It's allowing them to see some of the stuff that you're doing. So it might be they're eating and having a drink together. It might be they come be with you when you're on a task. They join you in that stuff. It could be that you're sitting together and talking through a particular thing that's happening in their lives. You might meet up in a coffee shop. There's lots of different environments you could do it, but I think it's about the formula. If there is a formula, it's something like time, quality time, plus asking great questions. So you're hearing what's going on in their lives. And there might be some sort of specific thing that's happening in their life at that time that you're focusing on. And what you're doing really is you are helping that person better hear what Jesus is saying to them and how are they going to respond to that word from the Lord. So I think that's the essence of what you're trying to do.
And how often would you be doing that?
It depends. I mean, you might just have... sometimes it's just a very short period of time, could even be a one-off, you can coach someone, but I think the best effect happens over a season of time, and where there's enough consistency that you build momentum. You're not constantly having to catch up at the starting time. So there's a flow in that relationship. That person is in your life in a consistent basis.
So are you saying, it sounds like you're talking about just one person, so are you doing this one-on-one, or would it be appropriate ever to do it as a group, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, totally. So both work, both have real strengths to them. Obviously the advantage of a group is you get to apprentice far more people at one go, and there's actually, when that works well, you get the group dynamic, so the group are learning from one another as well. So I think what we've discovered over the years is often the group environment for apprenticing is a very efficient way to do it. But at the same time, you're going to be having individuals, there's going to be specific things that you want to work through with people, and so that's part of it as well.
So often the individuals are part of a wider group, but a group is just an effective way of doing it.
Yes, it's the best use of your time.
And so if it's a group, how often would you be meeting?
Yeah, probably regularly. So at least once a month, if not a couple of times a month, would give you a good rhythm.
To get that momentum,
correct,
that interaction on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. And you can remember the stories and all the rest of it.
Okay, so how do you start? So how do you get it off the ground? How do you pick who you're going to invest in? It's because it would be a bit, how do you work out who's ripe?
Okay, so I think it starts with it goes back to relationships. So the first question would be, who do you want to invest into? So are there some people you're just thinking, I'd really like to pour into them? So that would be a great starting place very often. The second thing I would do is look for who is hungry. So there might be some people pursuing you, or who you observe in the life, say, of your church family, and you're thinking, wow, if we gave them a little bit of input, they could really be doing something significant. A third approach that I've done is, if I know I'm going to be in a place where there's quite a lot of people, say a church service on a Sunday morning, I might I do this little thing where I call it pray and spot and invite. So I'll pray and say, Lord, would you show me if there's someone here I need to be investing into? And then I look, I'm intentionally looking around the room, seeing who does the Lord draw my attention to, and then that would lead me to step into inviting them. And I think part of the inviting process is to test with a simple one-off sort of invitation. So if I know that person, obviously you've got some sort of context for thinking about it. If I don't know them particularly well, I might just start a conversation with them. You might even say, hey, sometimes it'd be lovely to get a coffee or tea with you. Or maybe there's an event that you're doing and you can invite them to come be on the team for that standalone thing. Hey, I'd love you to come join me, we're doing this. Would you like to come be part of that? And then what you're doing is you're observing their response, you're observing how they behave, I think one of the key things is, and this might be, it was a revelation for me when I worked it out, was not every person is going to want to be discipled by you, but they might be open to other people. So there might be someone you think, oh, loads of potential, but they just don't respond to you. And so, I've had that experience, and it's humbling, and sometimes it's upsetting even, but you have to honour the relational pathways both ways and see if they want to. If they don't want to learn from you, you can't disciple and apprentice them very well.
So that's a key thing they've actually want to learn.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back to some of the groups as well. So you've talked to an extent about individuals and how that might work, but also groups in the past of how, and the present, of how we've worked out who it is to invest in. So there've been several times where there've been a group of young adults in particular in our lives, and we felt it appropriate and just felt that burden from God to just invest in them. So we've almost called them into a group situation and say, this is our aim, we're wanting to invest in a whole bunch of young adults, we'd love you to be part of that. It's going to be a commitment of 6 months or a year or whatever it is, and sometimes we're quite blunt and we'll say our expectation is that by the end of this 6 months or year that you would be actively taking some sort of leadership role wherever God wants you to do that. So you're not forcing anything on them, but you're saying we want you to learn so that you can actually go and do. So again, that's some specific examples of what's happened in the past. But again, in terms of anything else about making that ask, because in some ways it sounds a bit weird to say, I'd like to invest in you, or I'd like to apprentice you, or whatever that.
Yeah, but I think it's you lean into the relationship. You test out, like I say, maybe go out for a coffee or something, and then what you might say is, hey, we've got a group of people we're particularly investing into, some of your age group. I'd like you to pray about being part of that. Or maybe you might say, hey, I'd love to get some more regular time with you, just to be able to encourage you and strengthen you and invest into you. So I think if you do it in that kind of more conversational tone, it doesn't sound totally weird.
And then what happens if someone says, can you mentor me? Which we've both had, and sometimes we felt it's appropriate, and sometimes we haven't. So do you always have to say yes, and would it always have to be one-on-one, or what would that look like?
Yeah, so you are going to get that. Hopefully. And that's a compliment, it's a good sign. But I think what you have to do is, my response will be generally to affirm them and say, listen, I need to pray about this, I need to talk with Hannah, and just looking at our schedules so we don't overcommit, and then give yourself some space, so don't agree on the spot, and then we pray about it, talk about it. And it's going back to some of the stuff I said earlier, which is, does this feel like the sort of person I'd want to invest into? Do I feel some relational connection? or as I pray about it, do I sense the Lord saying, yes, here's someone for you? Do I feel like they're teachable? Are they at the right level? And it depends who you're focusing on, because it might be you're in a phase where you're really focusing on people who are very baby in their faith. So you've got a group like that perhaps. Or alternatively, you might be really investing into people who are already leaders and training them to become leaders of leaders. And this other person doesn't fit that, and this might not work. So sometimes there's a timing thing as well. So I think you need to have permission to go as the Lord leads you.
Okay, and say you've got your apprentice or group of apprentices or whatever, and what sort of things would you be doing with them? Do you do a curriculum, or is it Bible study, or are there certain things which you should be covering, or what does it look like when you meet?
Yeah, very good. So there isn't a rule about this. There's not a secret Gnostic curriculum that we have to reveal to people. So it depends. It depends on what stage of life they're at, and depends what their needs are. It depends where you are at and who you're particularly investing into. So, for instance, we're doing some marriage preparation with a young couple. So clearly, that's the stage of life they're at. Those sorts of conversations are part of how we're apprenticing them. Whereas someone at a different stage of life, it would be a different conversation. I would say that there are some core things that you end up coming back to again and again. So it's our understanding of the gospel and what Jesus has done for us. It's I think you never go wrong when you're in the scriptures together. But I think particularly it's not so much I am downloading tons of content. What it's more about is helping them understand how they can encounter Jesus for themselves in the Bible, the Word and the Word. I think you're also talking a lot about identity with people. Who are you in Christ? You're talking about destiny. So who has Jesus made you to be? What are the good works that He's created for you to do? So that folds into practice to gifts and to calling and career and those sorts of issues of life. And I think if you really wanted to boil it down, it's in the power of the Spirit. I think it is your task is to ask great questions and to listen well, and when you're listening to that person, but you're also listening to the Lord, because the Holy Spirit's going to drop words of wisdom and discernment and revelation. Sometimes you speak those out, sometimes you pray them in, and I think that's the great task you do. You don't have to have all the answers, but you are asking great questions to help them think and encounter Jesus, but also you can minister in the power of the Spirit to them to help them encounter the Lord.
And I guess if going back to our definition of a disciple is someone basically who's listening to the voice of Jesus and then responding to that. Mm-hmm. So again, what you want to keep going back to the question of what is Jesus saying to you, and then what are you doing about mm-hmm. it? And if you're responding together about that, in each other's lives, then hopefully that's going to point them mm-hmm. continually towards Jesus.
It's good.
So if you are investing in others, should we be also being apprenticed and learning from mm-hmm. other people?
Yeah, for sure. We've not got to old age, so I don't know quite what it's like when you get to old age, but I think the principle is you should always be having people you are learning from in an intentional way. So who is investing into you? What does that look like? And likewise, who are you investing into? So, I love it when you see, say, in children's ministry, the older children investing into the younger children, and likewise the younger middle schoolers invest into elementary, and so on. You get this flow, and I think that's a great mindset to teach our children to do. And likewise with adults, we should always be investing into others, but also be receiving investment and being intentional, seeking out. Too many adult Christians coast. And they get to that stage where there's like, hey, I know enough. And they do know enough to get into heaven if that's your goal. But I think our goal should be something far greater than that. So we should always be hungry and being seeking out and learners.
So if we're always learners, but we're always sort of givers and empowerers or whatever, equippers as well, how do we make sure that those people we are discipling, those people we are investing in, are in turn discipling others? So it's making disciples that we're making rather than just, they're a disciple, they're growing, but we want to be passed on. How do?
Absolutely. So I think that's a statement. It's a stated expectation. So I will pour into you, but my expectation is that you in turn will be investing into others. So you say that from day one, and you encourage them. And you're asking, who are you investing into? And if they won't do it, then I would stop meeting with them. So, or they get kicked out of the group or whatever, because the deal is we're doing this so that you get multiplication impact. To help that happen, I think our task is to equip people with tools that enable them to be disciple makers. So again, it's escaping the trap of, hey, wow, I'm amazing, I've got all this secret knowledge I can download into you. Instead, what you do is, my task is to, like a proper apprentice, I'm showing you ways of doing things that then you can take and apply in lots of different scenarios and circumstances. So, it goes back to the essence, the discipleship question you asked, what's Jesus saying, how am I responding? But there's so many areas of life where we need to have the ability to boil it down to its essence and help the person grasp that, and then they can take and apply it in all the places where they go, and that enables them to be disciple makers far more effectively.
Great. So, of course, we always want to end with a practical thing for you guys. So we want to encourage you to think, who is it that God is highlighting to you that you need to be apprenticing? Is it one person or a couple or a whole group of people? So we need to make sure we're continually praying and asking God, who is it that you want me to pour my life into?
And we would love to hear feedback from you and comments. So if you're watching this anywhere else, please go to our website, dandelionresourcing.com. You'll see a whole bunch of other videos like this, and we would love to hear from you there. So thanks so much for watching.